The guards bring a young man found on the shore of the coastal city to an old man who has lived there for almost 60 years. The old man learns from the young man that only 30 minutes have passed in the real world during this time. Dominic Cobb is an extractor, a corporate spy who uses experimental military technology to infiltrate the subconscious of his targets and extract information through a shared dream world. His latest target, businessman Saito, listens with interest to Cobb and his assistant Arthur's musings about the possibility of stealing an idea and then leaves, promising to consider their proposal. At that moment, there is a loud noise and Arthur looks out the window anxiously. It turns out that the men are dreaming and their bodies are sleeping in a completely different place in a hotel room. And it is there on the streets that the explosions are heard and riots are taking place. But in the dream, the men step out onto the terrace while continuing their conversation. Cobb is sure that Saito's secrets are in his safe and intends to retrieve them. And then they notice a woman nearby. Cobb speaks to her and it turns out that they had a relationship in which they even had children. But apparently the woman left the family. Later, Cobb descends to the ground floor window and sneaks into Saito's office, where he switches the envelope in the businessman's safe. At that moment, the lights come on, and Cobb finds himself at gunpoint from Saito and Mel, his ex-wife. It turns out that she is playing on the side of his opponent. To make matters worse, they have captured Arthur, and Cobb has to surrender. Saito knows that they are in a dream and demands to know the name of their client. Mel reminds them that if you kill someone in a dream, they will wake up. But now Arthur feels the real pain. Saito shoots Arthur in the leg, and then Cobb rushes to the gun and shoots Arthur in the head. His partner wakes up in the real world. Cobb runs away with the envelope from the safe and reads it, while Saito demands to stop the thief who is trying to escape from the collapsing building, while Arthur has to use the kick and push Cobb into the bathroom with water to wake him up. They and Saito wake up almost simultaneously and engage in a confrontation, while a mob outside destroys everything around them. Cobb begins questioning Saito, during which it becomes clear that Saito himself orchestrated the provocation to test the capabilities of Cobb's team, and they failed. It turns out that this level is just a dream and their real bodies are sleeping on a fast-moving train where a guy is playing Edith Piaf's song. Saito is thrown to the ground and threatened with a weapon, but he just laughs. This carpet is different from the real one, so he's still asleep. A dream within a dream is impressive. However, this is a dream of one of the team members who are waking up on the train and dispersing in different directions, hiding from Saito's revenge. When Cobb reaches the apartment, the first thing he does is spin his totem, and he calms down when it stops spinning. Meanwhile, his children call, missing their dad, and asking when Mom will return. The man has to remind them, Mom is no longer here. Arthur comes to Cobb, the helicopter taxi on the roof. It's time to go before Saito finds them. But when they approach the helicopter, they see Saito sitting in it. The man has tested their capabilities and offers them to solve an extremely complex task for him. Not to steal, but to implant an idea into the subconscious or the inception of the right person. He needs Cobb to convince Robert Fisher, the son of his competitor, to dismantle his father's company. In exchange, Saito promises to clear Cobb of false charges of killing his wife with just one phone call so that he can legally return to the United States, where his children are. Cobb agrees, and the men fly to Paris to find a new architect. His father, a university professor, introduces him to a young but very talented student, Ariadne. The man gives her a task. The girl has to come up with a maze in 1 minute, and when she succeeds, Cobb explains that in a sleeping state, a person's brain is capable of literally everything without limitations. She will create a dream world that her team can bring a person into, filling it with their subconscious. The girl starts asking questions, and Cobb advises her to remember how she got to this cafe, and Ariadne realizes she's in a dream. Suddenly, everything around them starts exploding and flying in different directions, but Cobb and Ariadne sit calmly in the middle of this hurricane. A song by Edith Piaf plays, and the girl wakes up in a rented office, where Arthur explains that the military came up with this dream-sharing program to conduct more realistic training exercises. The brain works much faster in dreams, so 5 minutes in real time are equivalent to an hour in a dream. Ariadne starts creating her first model based on Cobb's subconscious and literally folds the city. The couple walks out onto the bridge that Ariadne created. The girl skillfully uses various architectural techniques, but suddenly Cobb recognizes the bridge. It is a real place, and it is strictly forbidden to create it, otherwise a person can lose their sense of reality and get lost in different worlds. The girl starts to become reckless, and the surroundings start attacking them because they are projections of the host's subconscious. Then Mal appears. Ariadne screams and wakes up in the office. Arthur explains that the only way to exit a dream is by dying, and the girl needs a totem, a small object whose characteristics only she knows, which will serve as a sign of reality in the world. Later, Cobb goes to India to find the thief imitator, Eames, and finds him in a gaming club. Eames confesses that he also conducted experiments on the implantation of ideas, but unfortunately the idea did not work out. The idea should be as simple as possible so that the subject can easily make it their own. Upon learning about the task ahead of them, Eames suggests finding out everything about Robert's relationship with his father, whose corporation he is supposed to destroy. But then it turns out that Cobb is being tracked by people from one of the companies he has stolen from. He tries to lose himself in the city's maze, but his pursuers find him and open fire. He is saved from inevitable doom by the sudden appearance of Saito. Meanwhile, in Paris, Arthur shows Ariadne examples of paradoxical architecture. In dreams, one can create literally anything, for example, endless staircases of any size. Cobb used to build incredible things, but no longer does so after his wife's death. At the same time, Eames leads Cobb to a familiar pharmacist named Yusuf, as they will need to enter the dream in 3 levels, and to ensure the dream is stable, a special sedative is required. The difficulty lies in the fact that because of this drug, one can only leave the dream through a kick. Death won't help. Saito announces that he will also join Cobb's team and explains the task. Fisher's company is the last obstacle before his own company reaches the dominant level. Eames asks to gain access to his godson, Browning. Meanwhile, Robert Fisher finds his father in a dying state. Eames concludes that in the first level of the dream, he can play the role of Browning and implant the necessary thoughts into the businessman's head. At the same time, Ariadne prepares her own totem, and Cobb shares information about his. Mal used to spin this stop, and if it didn't fall, then the world was not real. He forbids Ariadne from sharing sketches of the maze, otherwise projections of someone who knows the plan may infiltrate the dream. For example, Mal. But Cobb cannot refuse to participate in the operation because only he's familiar with the technique of Inception. The team is developing an implementation plan. To navigate through 3 levels of sleep, a very powerful sedative is required. Correspondingly, the time increases at each level, 1 week for the first, 6 months for the second, and 10 years for the third. The only way to return is through a kick, the sensation of falling that pushes a person out of the dream. Everything can be synchronized through music. But how to put Robert to sleep for 10 hours? Saito has an idea. Fisher frequently flies to Australia, so the businessman bought the airline company. Soon, a message arrives about the death of Morris, the elder, and the team boards the flight. On the plane, Cobb strikes up a conversation with Robert and slips a sedative into his water glass. The people fall asleep and find themselves in the middle of a rainy city, where they hijack a taxi with Fisher in it. Suddenly, a train appears in the middle of the street, driving over cars. While Cobb tries to figure out where it came from, the taxi with the kidnappers is attacked by Fisher's projections, well-trained professionals. A shootout ensues and Saito is wounded. The team manages to take the businessman away, but it turns out that Fisher was trained against dream espionage, and his projections are highly skilled professionals. This time, if someone dies, they don't wake up and end up in limbo, an unconstructed area of the subconscious for an unknown number of years. But the team has no choice but to continue their work. The heroes pretend to be kidnappers trying to extract the safe code from Fisher, but he doesn't know it. Eames transforms into Browning, who the villains are allegedly torturing. Meanwhile, Saito promises Cobb that he will fulfill his promise to him no matter what, and to do so, he will even return from limbo and become young again. At the same time, Browning tells Robert that there is a new will in the safe, his father's, about the division of the company. Robert admits that his father's last word was disappointed. Ariadne demands that Cobb finally tell the team the whole truth. By diving into Fisher, they are also diving into Cobb. And that means an unexpected train could appear at any moment, breaking all constructions. Cobb admits that he and Mel built their own world, in which they lived for almost 50 years. But the day came when he wanted to return to reality, which Mel did not want. However, they woke up, turning young again. But Mal convinced herself that this world was also unreal and she needed to wake up, which required her to die. And once he saw Mal sitting on the windowsill, demanding that Cobb jump with her. Otherwise, he faces arrest, as she left a letter accusing him of murder. And despite all his pleas, the woman jumped. Cobb had to flee the country. The conversation is interrupted by Fisher's projections, who surround the hangar, while he calls out a random combination of numbers at the kidnapper's demand. They put him in a van and drive away. Now they need to enter the second level, and after asking Yusuf to drive carefully, everyone falls asleep inside the dream. The heroes find themselves in a hotel. Cobb introduces himself to Fisher as the head of his security and draws attention to the dream's strangeness because on the first level, Yusuf's car comes under fire and tries to escape the chase. Cobb convinces Fisher that the dream kidnapping was orchestrated by Browning and persuades him to enter into a dream within a dream with Browning in order to extract his true motives, thereby lowering Fisher's consciousness even deeper. The team goes to the third level, leaving Arthur behind in the hotel, where he is immediately attacked by projections. Thus, defense is being carried out on two levels. Yusuf escapes pursuit on the first level, while Arthur defends against those who want to destroy the body sleeping in the hotel room on the second level. At one point, Yusuf's car flies off a cliff, and Arthur's hallway begins to change its position. The third level of the dream takes the team to snowy mountains. Saito and Robert go to the safe, while the others distract the guards, who use snowmobiles and all kinds of weapons. Meanwhile, on the second level, Yusuf's car falls into a trap on a bridge, and he turns on the music as signal for the kick. This means that the team has only 1 hour left. The kick begins, the car flies off the bridge, gravity disappears in the hotel, and a snow avalanche falls on Yusuf and Robert. The last chance to get to the kick is the moment of the van crashing into the water. Saito and Robert make it to the room before the safe, while Cobb warns them that an entire army is coming their way. And Arthur ties the bodies of his friends into a bundle and transports them to the elevator. Robert enters the room with the safe when Mal appears behind him. Cobb cannot shoot her, but she calmly shoots Fisher. Ariadne suggests going after Fisher to the lower level. And as soon as Arthur's music plays, they use the defibrillator and create a separate kick. Injured, Saito will delay the guards, as he has very little chance of escaping. Ariadne and Cobb move to the next level and find themselves in Limbo, a world constructed by Mal and Cobb, while the projections storm the fortress. Yusuf is tasked with setting up explosives, and Saito arms himself with a pistol. Cobb explains that the idea is like a virus, it takes root in the mind and becomes a part of the person. Mal picks up on his explanation and suggests that Cobb stay with her. Cobb admits that he planted the idea in Mal's mind that she needed to die to return home. Upon waking up, Mal could not shake the feeling that her world was not real and eventually killed herself to return to what she believed was the true reality. Saito dies from his wounds on the third level, and Eames activates the signal and defibrillator. But Mal refuses to let Fisher go. Cobb offers himself in exchange for Robert and orders Ariadne to take Fisher away while he finds Saito. Hearing this, Mal attacks Cobb with a knife, but Ariadne shoots her. Fisher returns to the third level of the dream and finds his father, who is disappointed that his son wanted to be him instead of creating his own identity. Robert retrieves his will and his childhood toy from a safe and cries over the bitterness of his loss. The explosives detonate on all levels, resulting in a series of events. Ariadne jumps off a balcony in Limbo. The fortress explodes on the third level. Arthur uses explosives to push the elevator on the second level, and the van falls into the water on the first level. Everyone except Cobb and Saito returns to the first level of the dream. Cobb says goodbye to his wife in Limbo. They have lived a long life together and aged together, but it is time to let her go. Yusuf's car plunges into the sea and the people surface. Sitting on the shore, Robert decides to divide his father's corporation, and either the Fisher Empire will disappear or Robert will build a more powerful one on its ruins. Cobb finds Saito as an old man and calls him back to reality to become young again. And in the next moment, everyone wakes up on the plane. Saito immediately grabs his phone, and when Cobb later goes through passport control, he is calmly allowed into the country. He finally returns home, and the first thing he does is spin his top. But as he hugs his children, the man does not see that the top is spinning without stopping. The movie makes a strong impression with its excellent special effects, beautiful actors, and a very interesting idea. However, you have to watch it very carefully, otherwise you'll lose the thread of the plot. The multifaceted nature of the film is also striking. With each viewing, you can notice something that you didn't pay attention to initially. But this little detail adds an additional feature to the plot, making the film to be watched multiple times.